Race, religion, and politics are sensitive subjects to discuss in multicultural conversation settings. Over the years, as a participant in these conversations, I've often wondered if the people participating in the discussions ever seriously searched their hearts and minds to honestly ask and answer why it is that most white people, regardless of their religious and spiritual beliefs, don't want minorities, especially black people, to succeed. It's a question that has been asked for centuries, and it's one that has a clear answer, and that's racism. However, there are many factors that contribute to racism, such as fear, ignorance, and prejudice. But one of the most insidious factors is the belief that the black race is somehow inferior to all other races. This belief is often based on the idea that black people are less human, less intelligent, less capable, and less deserving than others. It's a belief that has been used to justify slavery, segregation, and discrimination that still persists to this day. Racism is practiced predominantly among the white majority Caucasian Americans against African Americans in the United States. Not all white people share these white supremacist beliefs, but even those who don't may still harbor some unconscious biases against us. These biases can lead to discrimination in hiring, housing, education, and other areas of life. Another reason is fear. White people don't ever want black people to be put into a position to inflict the same pain, trauma, and oppression that they have inflicted on our people. This fear is nailed to the walls of white people's minds, even those who don't actively practice racism and white supremacy. This fear is best described by Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence and third President of the United States, who famously described the owning black slaves as holding a wolf by the ears. This is the same Thomas Jefferson who was a slave owner that impregnated one of his female slaves named Sally Hemings. Jefferson and Hemings have biracial offspring that exist to this day. This evocative image of having the wolf by the ears captures the nature of slavery, a system built on the foundation of white supremacy and fear of black retribution. It highlights the uneasy truce between the inhumane brutality of the institution and the constant fear of its potential repercussions. The wolf in Jefferson's metaphor represents the threat of black resistance, revenge, and retribution fueled by centuries of exploitation, dehumanization, and violence inflicted upon us. The fear of black resistance, revenge, and retribution permeates the history of slavery and continues to echo in the anxieties of most white Americans today. This fear manifests as a deep-seated belief that any empowerment of black people, any shift in power dynamics, will inevitably lead to a reversal of the roles, with black people seeking to inflict the same suffering they have endured. This fear is rooted in a distorted understanding of history and human nature. The narrative of black people as inherently vengeful, waiting to unleash their fury on whites, ignores the immense suffering inflicted upon them and the enduring legacy of oppression. The fear of black resistance, revenge, and retribution, while understandable in the context of a system built on violence and control, serves as a justification for maintaining the status quo. It perpetuates the cycle of fear and oppression, preventing meaningful progress towards racial equality and justice. The fear of black empowerment also reveals a deep-seated belief in the permanence of white supremacy. The idea that whites will never allow black people to have power, to inflict the type of pain and trauma they have endured, speaks to a systemic and pervasive prejudice. It implies that white control is not only desired, but also necessary, as if black agency poses an existential threat to white dominance. This fear, however, is a product of social conditioning, not reality. The vast majority of black people do not seek revenge or retribution. We are a spiritual people who tend to leave vengeance in the hands of God. Our desire is for equality, for the right to live and thrive free from the shackles of prejudice and systemic oppression. The historical context of slavery and its legacy should be acknowledged and understood, but it should not be used to create a narrative of conflict or continued systemic injustice and oppression out of fear of retribution. The wolf by the ears analogy reminds us that the path to true equality is not one of vengeance or fear, but of understanding and empathy. It is time to replace the fear of Black empowerment and racial equality with the recognition of Black humanity. We, the American people, must acknowledge the historical injustices and work towards dismantling the systems that perpetuate them. Only then can we move beyond the anxieties of the past and build a future where the wolf is finally let go, and all people can live in peace and equality.
In a world where race, religion, and politics intersect, the conversation around African American representation and participation in politics is crucial. Why do so many white individuals resist the inclusion of minorities, particularly African Americans? The answer lies in the deep-rooted issue of racism. Racism, fueled by fear, hate, ignorance, and prejudice, perpetuates the belief in Black inferiority. This belief has historically justified discrimination and oppression, hindering progress towards equality and justice. Racism often manifests in white Americans against African Americans, leading to discrimination in various aspects of life. The fear of Black empowerment stems from a history of exploitation and violence, perpetuating the narrative of white supremacy. This fear is based on a distorted understanding of history and human nature, hindering the path to racial equality and justice. The fear of Black retribution, deeply ingrained in the history of slavery, continues to influence the anxieties of many white Americans. This fear is unfounded and perpetuates the status quo, impeding progress towards equality. It is time to replace this fear with a recognition of Black humanity and work towards dismantling systemic injustices. Racism is a system that benefits white individuals at the expense of Black people, perpetuated by conscious and unconscious biases. To create a more just society, we must challenge racism in all its forms. This includes educating ourselves about the history and impact of racism, speaking out against it, and working towards a more inclusive society. Two primary approaches to combating racism have emerged: top-down strategies focusing on systemic change and personal-level approaches targeting individual attitudes and behaviors. Advocates of the top-down approach emphasize the need for comprehensive interventions at the institutional level to address systemic racism. The personal-level approach aims to change individual attitudes and behaviors through education, awareness, empathy, and confronting unconscious biases. By empowering individuals to challenge racism internally, it creates a ripple effect that can lead to grassroots movements demanding systemic reforms. The fight against racism requires a combination of top-down and personal-level approaches. While top-down reforms establish legal frameworks and institutional changes, personal-level interventions address the root causes of racism by changing individual behaviors. By working together, these approaches can create a comprehensive strategy for combating racism and promoting a more just society.
Racial profiling, police brutality, mass incarceration, and inequality in the judicial system continues to plague the African American community. Addressing the issues of police brutality and mass incarceration that disproportionately affect the African American community requires a comprehensive approach that involves both religious and political leaders. Religious leaders can initiate community dialogues that foster empathy and understanding. By encouraging their congregations to engage in peaceful protests and advocate for policy changes, they can play a pivotal role in the movement for justice. Utilizing their moral authority, they can advocate for restorative justice programs that prioritize rehabilitation over punishment and promote community policing initiatives to build trust between law enforcement and marginalized communities. political leaders must enact meaningful legislative reforms. This includes ending mandatory minimum sentences, reducing the use of cash bail, and investing in social programs that address the root causes of crime, such as poverty and lack of access to education and employment. By investing in education, mental health services, and job training opportunities, they can empower communities and break the cycle of poverty that often leads to crime. Political leaders should push for increased police accountability and transparency. This can be achieved through independent investigations, the use of body cameras, and the establishment of civilian oversight boards. These measures are essential to ensure justice for victims of police brutality and to hold officers accountable for their actions. Challenging racist ideologies. Both religious and political leaders should actively challenge the racist ideologies and systemic biases that permeate the criminal justice system. Promoting a culture of inclusion and equality that recognizes the inherent dignity and worth of every individual is crucial for lasting change.
African Americans were kidnapped and brought to America to work as slaves, have lived in urban neighborhoods plagued by crime and poverty. Other immigrants come over to America voluntarily, allowed to thrive in their own neighborhoods and cities, live the American dream, and own businesses in African American neighborhoods. The Asians own the nail shops and beauty supply stores. Middle Easterns own the gas stations and liquor stores. African own the hair braiding salons. Hispanics own food trucks and restaurants and home renovation companies. While African Americans continue to be denied these opportunities, Native Americans live on reservations and own casinos in many cities and towns throughout the country. Every other race is allowed to thrive, except African Americans. Migrants have now come into the country illegally at the southern border, just being bused to sanctuary cities where they are given free food assistance, EBT cards, housing, health care, and job opportunities, while African Americans continue to be underserved because funding the migrants is a priority of the politicians.
Nowadays, many businesses in African American neighborhoods are owned by other minorities, thriving by offering products and services that cater to the specific needs and preferences of African Americans. For example, numerous food trucks and restaurants offering ethnic cuisines are owned by Africans, Asians, and Hispanics. Additionally, clothing boutiques, beauty supply stores, braiding salons, and nail shops cater predominantly to African American clientele. Meanwhile, liquor stores and gas stations are often owned by individuals from the Middle East and India. Native Americans have casinos and reservations. This situation isn't about other minorities exploiting the African American community, rather. It highlights their ability to provide valuable products and services that were previously lacking or served due to systemic racism that has shut African Americans out of owning such businesses. The success of these minority-owned businesses also stems from a strong understanding of their own cultural heritage and its appeal to specific communities, often involving cultural exchange and collaboration that bridges cultural gaps and fosters connections. They hire and support their own out of a strong sense of unity and solidarity. Many immigrant entrepreneurs choose to establish businesses in Black communities due to economic opportunities. These neighborhoods often require essential services, and immigrant entrepreneurs are eager to fill those gaps, offering competitive prices and diverse options. Native Americans receive reparations from the federal government in the form of funding and reservations. Indian reservations are areas of land set aside by the United States government for the exclusive use and occupancy of federally recognized Native American tribes. These reservations are sovereign entities within the United States with their own unique systems of government and funding. The governance and funding of Native American reservations are complex and multifaceted, with tribes maintaining unique legal, cultural, and political systems. While federal funding plays a significant role, reservations also seek to diversify their funding sources and promote economic development. This creates a symbiotic relationship where both communities benefit from the economic activity. In the United States, racial and ethnic groups have historically experienced different levels of success in establishing and sustaining vibrant communities. While Hispanics, Asians, and foreign-born blacks have been able to create thriving communities, African Americans continue to face significant barriers, including interracial division and a crabs-in-a-barrel mentality. This interracial competition and sabotage are social conditions often attributed to the Willie Lynch Letter, a document purportedly written to encourage the destruction of unity within the African American community. The legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws has profoundly impacted African American communities, creating a culture of fear, poverty, and discrimination that persists today. Practices such as redlining and other forms of discrimination have confined African Americans to disadvantaged neighborhoods with limited access to quality housing, education, and employment. In recent decades, the United States has experienced significant immigration from Hispanic and Asian countries. These immigrants have brought their cultures, skills, and entrepreneurial spirit, contributing to the growth of their communities. While African immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean have also migrated to the United States, they have faced different challenges in integrating into American society. African Americans continue to face disparities in educational attainment compared to other racial groups, which limits their job prospects and economic mobility. Higher rates of unemployment and income inequality contribute to poverty and lack of opportunity within African American communities. The disproportionate incarceration of African Americans, particularly for drug offenses, has further marginalized and disrupted these communities. Historically, government policies have favored the development of other racial and ethnic communities over African American communities, resulting in limited investment in education, infrastructure, and economic empowerment. African Americans are disproportionately subjected to racial profiling and police bias, creating a climate of fear and mistrust. Persistent stereotypes and prejudice continue to limit opportunities and reinforce social barriers. Some within the African American community face challenges such as lack of unity, self-destructive behavior, and a sense of hopelessness. To address these disparities, it is crucial to implement comprehensive strategies that tackle the root causes. Provide quality education, job training, and entrepreneurship support to African American communities. Reform criminal justice policies to reduce racial disparities in incarceration. Implement accountability measures and provide unconscious bias training for law enforcement and other public officials. Address the historical trauma and systemic racism that have impacted African American communities. Celebrate African American culture and history and encourage community cohesion. By addressing these barriers, the United States can create a more equitable society where all racial and ethnic groups have the opportunity to thrive and contribute to the nation's success. Criminal justice reform, economic inequality, and education are critical concerns for the African American community. However, policymakers often prioritize immigration-related issues, leading to feelings of neglect or marginalization among African Americans. Advocacy groups may need to split their focus between supporting migrant rights and addressing the long-standing issues facing African Americans, which can dilute the effectiveness of both efforts. Nonprofit organizations and community groups often compete for limited funding and resources to support their initiatives. This competition can hinder the progress of programs specifically aimed at addressing African American issues. The combined pressures of job competition, wage suppression, and limited access to resources can make it more difficult for African Americans to achieve economic mobility and improve their living conditions. Overcrowded schools and limited educational resources can impact the quality of education that African American children receive, affecting their future opportunities for higher education and employment. The additional pressures brought on by the migrant crisis can exacerbate existing inequities faced by African Americans, making it harder to address systemic issues such as poverty, discrimination, and lack of access to quality healthcare and education. While the migrant crisis presents opportunities for solidarity and mutual support, it also poses significant challenges for the African American community. Economic competition, resource allocation, community tensions, and political dynamics can all have negative impacts, exacerbating existing disparities and hindering progress toward greater equity and justice. Addressing these challenges requires careful policy consideration and efforts to ensure that the needs of both communities are met in a fair and balanced manner.
Hey there, everyone. Today, we're diving into a thought-provoking discussion about the Black Ghetto gentrification. Get ready for a dramatic depiction of a Black man who has lived in the same neighborhood for 50 years. This neighborhood was once known as the Ghetto, but as gentrification takes hold, he's now considered an outsider in his own community. Picture this: a man named Sam has called this neighborhood home for half a century. He remembers it as the Ghetto, with stories of how he bought his first house there for just $20 down and $25 a month. Sam even had his children in this very community. But here's where things get interesting, or rather, dramatic. Now, Sam finds himself caught in the middle of a gentrification process that has transformed his neighborhood into a place where he no longer belongs. It's like he's an outsider in his own community, as Sam puts it. Now, I feel like an outcast because I don't look like them. In fact, he even feels uncomfortable just walking around his own neighborhood these days. The new residents don't want him there anymore because he doesn't fit in with the changed times. Sadly, Sam predicts that shortly after he passes away, bulldozers will roll in and demolish every house that embodies his rich history and memories. What happened to him is just one of many heartbreaking stories of countless displaced Black people across America during this era of massive gentrification. So there you have it, folks, a glimpse into the harsh reality of Black Ghetto gentrification. Thanks for joining me in this thought-provoking discussion. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Until next time, stay safe and keep the conversation going.
American cities are changing. Once hollowed out by suburbanization, urban centers are experiencing a resurgence. This reverse white flight brings new residents and investment, but it also creates tension. As more affluent, predominantly white populations move into historically Black neighborhoods, the effects are deeply felt. The allure of city life is undeniable. However, this influx of affluence has unintended consequences. As demand for housing increases, so do property values, often pricing out the very communities that gave these neighborhoods their character. The future of our cities depends on our ability to create inclusive spaces where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Gentrification brings with it a wave of economic change. Property values skyrocket, attracting developers and investors eager to capitalize on the newfound desirability. While this can lead to improved infrastructure and amenities, it also creates a significant burden on longtime residents. Economist Media, African American Small Businesses, Urban Community. Small businesses, the backbone of many African American communities, also face mounting pressure. Rising rents and increased competition from upscale establishments can make it difficult to survive. Longtime residents, often Black and brown families, find themselves priced out of the very neighborhoods they helped build. Addressing this economic disparity requires a multi-pronged approach. Supporting minority-owned businesses through grants, loans, and technical assistance can help them adapt to the changing market. The influx of new residents can also lead to cultural clashes and misunderstandings. Longtime residents may feel like strangers in their own neighborhoods, their voices drowned out by the influx of newcomers. Community dialogues, cultural exchange programs, and initiatives that promote social cohesion can help bridge divides and build a more inclusive environment. Gentrification threatens not only the social fabric, but also the cultural heritage of African American communities. As neighborhoods transform, so too do their landscapes. Landmarks disappear, businesses change hands, and the physical reminders of a rich and vibrant history fade away. Community leader. These neighborhoods have served as the backdrop for generations of Black life, resilience, and achievement. The loss of cultural spaces such as churches, music venues, and community centers further diminishes the sense of place and identity. Preserving cultural history requires intentional effort. Landmark designations, oral history projects, and community archives can help document and celebrate the unique character of these neighborhoods. Supporting cultural institutions and incorporating their stories into the fabric of the revitalized community ensures that their legacy lives on. Creating equitable cities where all residents can thrive requires a fundamental shift in how we approach urban development. Urban planner. One crucial step is implementing robust, affordable housing policies. Inclusionary zoning ordinances can require developers to set aside a percentage of units in new construction for low and moderate income residents. Expanding access to housing vouchers and subsidies can provide immediate relief for families struggling to afford rent. Protecting tenants' rights is equally important. Rent control measures can help stabilize housing costs and prevent displacement. Investing in community land trusts, where land is owned collectively and leased affordably to residents, can provide long-term housing security and prevent displacement. While top-down policies are essential, lasting change requires a bottom-up approach, empowering communities to shape their own destinies. Urban planner. Community land trusts, as mentioned earlier, represent one such solution. By collectively owning land, residents gain control over development decisions and ensure that housing remains affordable for generations to come. Another powerful tool is Community Benefit Agreements, or CBAs. These legally binding agreements between developers and community organizations ensure that new development projects include provisions for affordable housing, local hiring, and other community benefits. Supporting community development corporations, or CDCs, is crucial. These non-profit organizations work at the grassroots level to develop affordable housing, create economic opportunities, and improve the quality of life in their neighborhoods. By working together, we can create cities where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or income level.